Hey guys, it's Scott with Scotty B Cards, and in this video, I want to talk about the best young players to invest in. So I have a list in this video, and in this list, I have the 10 players under age 25 who I think are the best purchases, investments, short to long term. And I'll discuss why I feel each player deserves that spot. Just a heads up, this list only has players who made their major league debut, only because I don't want to speculate too hard on prospects, because that's a crapshoot. Anybody can get lucky on those, and anybody can get really unlucky on those. I don't want to recommend buying anybody in particular in the minor leagues. On top of that, I do have my honorable mentions list, so that way you can't get mad at me for not having a favorite player on there. So here are the honorable mentions. We have Jordan Alvarez, Nick Madrigal, Dylan Carlson, Eloy Jimenez, Jared Kelenic, Brian Hayes, and Austin Riley. The only one I want to focus on here is Austin Riley, because I could argue he's in the top 8, so I could put him in number 8, number 9, or number 10. But because this is his first decent year, before he was a very average or below average player, he was really good. He was above average, probably one of the best third basemen in all of baseball, behind maybe Jose Ramirez. You could argue at a better year than Austin Riley, but he was awesome. And I only have him off the list now because he's in his age 25 season, and that was his best year. I don't know how sustainable it is. I think it is, but I can't recommend Austin Riley above these other players in my personal opinion. All right, so let's start out. Number 10, we have Rafael Devers. Rafael Devers is a third baseman who hits the ball very hard, very good offensive player, and a very, very, very bad defensive player. And I hear people argue all the time. That's not true. I watch all of the Red Sox games, and Devers makes all the plays he needs to make, which may be right. He may only have a few errors, but he might not get to a bunch of balls that the average third baseman gets to. So while he's not missing plays, he's not looking as good. One thing I want to point out is outs above average is probably my favorite defensive metric. It looks at how many outs you save or you hurt your team. He's number 240 out of 242, so the third worst defensive player in Major League Baseball, but offensively, he's amazing. How hard he hits the ball, his on-base percentage is amazing. This is actually his WOBA, which is kind of like OPS plus, and OPS plus measures how good you are compared to league average, and he's elite offensively. He does chase a lot. He's not as slow as you would think. He's in the 46th percentile, but he may move off of third base and become a DH or a first baseman in the future, which hurts some of his value. But again, last year, really strong year, 38 home runs, 113 RBI, and he still hit a 279 batting average and an OPS plus. Again, 100 is league average. He had a 132, 32% better than the average OPS and the average baseball player. Next up is Ozzie Albies at number 9. He's a switch hitting second baseman. He has all the tools to be a multi-time all-star already. You can see he's very quick. He does not walk, not a super high on base percentage. That's why his OPS is lower. That's also why his OPS plus is lower, but a good defensive player. He is not a liability, which is really nice, and he has some power. 30 home runs from a second baseman is very impressive, even though his OPS was below 800. 800 is kind of the benchmark for a good player, so he's right around where he's a decent player overall with hitting and defense, and he's been playing for so long already, 5 years, that he has potential to be a relatively good long-term investment if he can age well in his career. Number 8, we have Kyle Tucker. So Kyle Tucker, I want you to look at this. Outs above average, defensively, amazing, 89th percentile, 89th best in the league. Offensively, hits the ball hard. Over here, you have expected batting average, expected WOBA. All these things are really, really high. He does not strike out very much. He has a decent walk rate, 57th percentile. And I'm only using these percentile rankings to tell a story quicker. I don't think they're everything, so I want to emphasize that. He had a 5.7 WAR season. WAR is wins above replacement, which measures you against an average replacement player, let's say from AAA. If you put a player from AAA in the specific spot, he provided 5.7 more wins than that player. And anything above a 4 is all-star level. Anything above an 8 is MVP level. So he's approaching that level, which is really nice. And you can see 30 home runs, 92 RBI. I think he's a good buy because he's going to be the guy in Houston. You still have Altuve, you still have Bregman, but he's that next up because Correa is going to be gone. And a 147 OPS plus is amazing. That was actually 9th in all of Major League Baseball. So that's why I think Kyle Tucker is a good buy. Then we have Luis Robert. Luis Robert is interesting because he really has not played that many games. He hasn't even played a total of 162 games in his career. He's only at 124. But in those 124 games, he has 5.4 WAR. And the reason why I put him up here is because his ceiling is so unbelievably high. You can see his WAR for 162 games. So if you played a full season, he would average 7 WAR according to the first 124 games he's played in his career. He has monster power. He can hit the ball really far, but he does strike out a lot. That one is for sure. He does not have many metrics that he qualified for Baseball Savant because he didn't play enough games, but he did win a Gold Glove his rookie year, and he just has a lot of potential. Good offense and a good defensive player, but he will be 24, so some of his investability is kind of leaving because you need to debut really early to have potential to make the Hall of Fame, which drives card values. Now we have Bichette. I was debating putting him next, but Bichette, he's hurt by defense. I was surprised how bad his defensive numbers were. Outs above average, he's the 6th percentile, so like 6th worst of all baseball players. But he offensively is amazing. He doesn't walk, which hurts his on-base percentage. A 343 on base isn't that good. You want to be around 380 to 400 if you want to be elite. But overall, he's not a bad on-base guy, just not anything special. 298 batting average is great. If he's around 300 at a batting average, he'll keep his OPS above 800 while still playing shortstop. That's really nice. And maybe I'm wrong and he's a good defensive player, but overall, everything I see shows he's not that great. 5.9 WAR though for a 23-year-old last year is insane. And he's really forgotten about behind Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and all these other players who are really shining. It's a good thing we have all these players, but it's a bad thing because people are forgotten about. He has 9.3, so basically 10 career WAR at this point. The average Hall of Famer is around 60. So if he can get to that point, who knows? He has a chance. Now we have Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I put him as 4A. I have a tie at 4, and I'll explain my thought process, and you may not like it, and that's okay. But overall, offensively, amazing. He's amazing offensively. 99th percentile in average exit velocity, max exit velocity, hard hit percentage, and expected WOBA. All of these numbers are super high. He doesn't strike out very much. He doesn't really chase. He does swing and miss quite a bit, but he's not swinging outside the strike zone. He's just swinging hard. And barrel percentage, he's barreling up 90% of baseballs he hits. That's really impressive. His walk rate's really high, which helps to have the second highest OPS in all of baseball last year, behind only Bryce Harper, who won the National League MVP. 48 home runs is crazy. It's just defensively is where his value is hurt a little bit. And looking at this, I think he could have been easily number 3 or even number 2. I just like the other ones better because their game's more all the way around. But if Vlad can repeat this season a few more times, I can only imagine that his cards are going to go insane. And out of all the players, I don't think his season was a fluke, so he might be somebody you want to pick up. Next is Wander Franco. And for Wander Franco, he does not have many statistics. He's only played 70 games, but the eye test for Wander Franco is insane. Switch hitting shortstop with crazy tools. Defensively, he was really good in the minor leagues. When he was in the big leagues, you can see his outs above average weren't very good, which surprised me because he made some really great plays. It's the same eye test. It doesn't always match up to correctly distinguishing if a player is a good defender sometimes. Eye test is really important. I don't want to see my comments. You said that is not important. No, it is important. But the other thing is he might not be getting to all the balls. He may not be able to have the correct range to be a good defensive shortstop for the long term. But he had an 810 OPS, which isn't anything crazy, but he had a really rough stretch in the middle of his debut. And he's averaging 8.1 WAR of every 162 games at age 20. So if he can just get a little bit better, his numbers are going to be insane, and he's going to be the next hobby darling. I'm not saying go out and buy every Wander Franco Bowman Chrome autograph because they're probably over $2,000 already, but I do think he's somebody for the long term that's going to be talked about in the hobby, maybe even more than Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Whether that's fair, I don't know, and whether it's going to happen, we'll find out. At number 3, I have Ronald Acuna Jr. I would have put him number 2 or even number 1 potentially, but his ACL tear is a little concerning for me. When you tear your ACL nowadays, it's not as big of a deal as it used to be because the recovery isn't as hard. You have the world's best doctors, the world's best surgeries, you recover quicker, you're back on the field before you know it. But the truth is, he's heading into his age 24 season, and he might not be ready by opening day. He might be in May or June, and that's scary because he's usually a slow starter in the big leagues. And if he's a slow starter, he might not be able to really play well until August. And if that's the case, his age 24 season is going to be okay in my eyes. I don't think it's going to be anything crazy. I don't think he'll win an MVP, but he will get back to normal by his age 25 season. But he's losing that season right in the middle of his prime. Prime generally is considered 28 to 30, but it's getting younger and younger, and you can see that with some of these players. But right here, he unfortunately had only 46 games played in 2020 due to COVID. He only had 82 games played in 2021 due to an injury. So he's not getting as many games as you would hope for Ronald Acuna Jr. But you can see over here, sprint speed in the 97th percentile. Let's say he's only in the 80th percentile after his recovery. That's still amazing. But everything else is red that you want to be red. Strikeout percentage and whip percentage, it is what it is. It's not a big deal. One thing I do like about Ronald Acuna Jr. I want to point out is the fact that he hits home runs everywhere. He'll take you the other way. You can pull the ball a mile, or you can go straight away center field. He's a player that can really punish you no matter where you pitch, and a career OPS plus, which again 100 is league average, at 138 as a 23-year-old is really good. And overall, you can see as well, he has really high ceiling with his stolen bases. I don't know how he's going to be when he gets back, but if he can steal some bags, it's also really impressive. At number 2, we have Fernando Tatis Jr. I just did an entire video on Fernando Tatis Jr. and how good he is. If you want to see that, click on this link now. But overall, his expected slugging is the highest in baseball at 100th percentile. Sprint speed is at 96th percentile. Average exit velocity still in the 98th percentile, just like Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I think he might have been the 99th, but the point is he's one of the best in all of baseball. He's not as bad defensively as you'd expect, but he's still not the best. Better than Bichette, better than Wander Franco, but not the best. He can take the ball to all parts of the field as well. The reason I don't have him higher is the fact that his shoulder concerns me. He did not have shoulder surgery, and he probably should have, but at the same time, I'm not a doctor. He probably has world-class doctors with him telling him what to do, but if his shoulder keeps popping out, that's going to be a major issue. He's going to serve tons of time on the IL and eventually get shoulder surgery. So until he proves me wrong that he can stay healthy with that shoulder, I wouldn't put a ton of money behind him. I think you can put money behind him, but that's the one caveat on why it might not be wise necessarily. But 166 OPS plus in 2021 is insane for a shortstop, especially when he had 6.6 WAR and he led the league in home runs for the National League. You know, as MVP, second runner-up, he probably could have won the MVP easily if he didn't have that late injury, which really zapped all of his hitting. He could have easily won the MVP. So because Harper's team kind of had a run and the voters were excited about Harper, that's kind of what won it for him. But for Tatis, he basically just barely lost out in the MVP, and it would not surprise me with how the National League has so much talent, but it fluctuates with these players having good and bad years. He could win 1, 2, 3, or MVPs in his future. And at number 1, we have Juan Soto. Juan Soto is amazing. I really only made this video for Juan Soto. I want to talk about it. Look how much red is here. He doesn't chase. Best in all of baseball. His walk percentage, best in all of baseball. Average exit velocity, still elite. Max exit velocity is the same thing. He barrels all the baseballs that are thrown his way. And on top of that, he is second in adjusted OPS plus, so the second best hitter in all of baseball, in my opinion, behind Harper. And you can see similar batters through age 22, because this was his age freaking 22 season, is Mike Trout, Frank Robinson, Bryce Harper, Miguel Cabrera, Mickey Mantle, Tony Conigliaro, Hank Aaron, Orlando Cepeda, Giancarlo Stanton, and Ken Griffey Jr. So everybody on this list is going to be a Hall of Famer besides Conigliaro and Stanton. And so you have great company. And over here, I have a couple really cool trivia facts. How many players in Major League Baseball have more walks than strikeouts? Only one, and that's Juan Soto. You can see his World Series stats, so he's not just good in the regular season like players say about other different players. And on top of that, he's 11th all-time in OBP if you project this exact where he's at now, over 3,000 plate appearances. I have a feeling he's going to be even higher on this list, probably up here at number 7 next to Barry Bonds, just because his team's not going to be good and he is not afraid to take his walks. I've never seen a player with better strike zone discipline than Juan Soto. 145 walks last year versus only 93 strikeouts. That's crazy. His team's bad. In the second half of the season, that's where he got all those walks, as they'd walk him 2, 3, 4 times a game. And I don't know if these numbers are going to be inflated like his WAR numbers and his on base numbers because of his bad team, but if that's the case, that's still value. Getting on base creates runs, and when you score runs, it allows your team to win. So it's equal if he had a solo home run versus got on base and gets scored in. The point is, there's hardly any other players in all of baseball that have ever been as good offensively as he has been so far at this young age, and I'm very bullish on him. Everything could change with an injury. Everything could change with 1 year bad performance, but if I was going to put the farm on anybody in baseball, it'd be Juan Soto. The only thing he's not great at is his jump in the outfield's not great, but he makes up for it with reading the ball well off the bat because he is actually above average defensively now, and his sprint speed is very average. That will decline as he ages. He might have to move to DH eventually in his career, but if he does, no big deal. He'll still be amazing. He's going to be the Greek god of walks, just like Kevin Youkilis in Moneyball. So overall, Juan Soto is my number 1, clear number 1 in my personal opinion. Let me know down in the comments below if there's anybody you would personally change, and if I forgot anybody on this list. Other than that, I'll see you in the next video.